Yeah. Hi guys. Good evening, everyone. Online people, can you hear my voice? Online students. Yeah, perfect. So in the last session, we discussed about what is a servlet and how to develop a servlet and how request will be processed by server when we send the request to that URL, right? So what is a servlet? Servlet, here guys, there are three definitions available for the servlet. The first one is we can call servlet as a technology. Servlet is a technology which is used to develop web applications in the Java. If you want to develop web applications by using Java, then we are going to use servlet technology. And we can also say servlet is a API released by Sun Micro system. Servlet is a API which is released from Sun Micro system. So if you want to develop any web application in the Java, then servlet API is mandatory. Servlet API released by Sun Micro system. For that servlet API, several server vendors provided the implementation. Tomcat provided implementation for servlet API. JBoss provided implementation for servlet API. Similarly, WebLogic server, WebSphere server also provided implementation. And we can also say that servlet is an interface available in Java X.servlet package. Servlet is an interface available in Java X.servlet package. I told you there are three ways to create the servlet. How many ways are there to create the servlet? There are three ways available to create a servlet. One is by implementing servlet interface. Second one is by extending generic servlet. Third one is by extending HTTP servlet. Which approach we are following? Third approach, that is by extending HTTP servlet. So if anybody asks you what is a servlet, we can give any one of these definition. Okay, servlet is a technology which is used to develop web applications in the Java. And we can also say servlet is an API given by Sun Micro system. Servlet is an interface available in Java X.servlet package to create servlets. To implement that interface, by implementing that interface, we can create our servlet. All right. Now, after that, we have seen how a request will be processed by the server. What is a server? What is a server, guys? Server is a program which is used to execute our web applications. Here we are using Tomcat server. So inside the Tomcat server, we will be having servlet container and JSP container. Servlet container is responsible to execute servlet program. JSP container is responsible to execute JSP programs. JSP pages will be developed for the presentation logic. To execute the JSP pages, server will use JSP container. To execute servlet classes, server will use servlet container. Container nothing but a program which will provide the environment to run our programs. So what is JVM? JVM is also a program developed by Sun Microsystem. That JVM is a container to run the Java programs. Similarly, servlet container is a program which will run the servlets. JSP container is a program which will run the JSP pages. So this is servlet container, JSP container will be available inside the server. Currently we are using Tomcat server. If you want to run a web application should be deployed inside a server. What is the meaning of deployment? Keeping the WAR file inside the server is called as a deployment. Now I have deployed my project in the server and I am making a request. Can you tell me how the request will be processed by the server? Yeah, what is the request processing logic? First, user will send a request by using browser. Browser will convert that request into HTTP request object and will give to server. Server may available in the same computer. Server may available in the different computer. Currently, our server is available in the same computer. That's why we are using local host. What is the meaning of local host? Server location in which computer that server is running. So browser is available in my machine and server is also running in my machine only. That is the reason I'm giving localhost colon 8080. 8080 is a port number. Localhost represents in the same computer my server is running. Tomorrow in the company, server may available in the different computer. If a server is available in the different computer, we need to specify IP address of the server. That means in which computer your server is running, that computer IP address we need to specify. 192.168.4.3, 4.2, something like that. 8080.02, my application name. For example, this is my application name /first. So like this, we are going to send the request to the server. If a server is available in the same computer, we are using localhost. If a server is available in a different computer, we will use IP address. That IP represents in which computer your server is running. Now, I am sending a request by using browser. Browser will send that request to server by creating HTTP request. Server will receive that request. What server will do once it received our request? Server is going to create two objects. What are those two objects? One is request object, second one is response object. Then it will take the HTTP request data, it will store into request object. Then server will understand this request came for which application, for which resource. Server will identify that. Suppose whatever the resource we are requesting, which is servlet we want to execute, that servlet is not available in the server. Then what will happen? That whatever the resource I'm requesting, that resource is not available in the server. Then what will happen? Server will prepare a response. Success response or failure response? Server will prepare a failure response. It will keep that in the response object. It will send that response to client with the status code. Client problem 404. Resource not available. Suppose requested resource is available in the project, then 200. First it will call the servlet. What are the parameters it is giving for the servlet? Server is passing anything for the servlet or server not passing anything to servlet? Server is passing two objects to the servlet. What are those two objects? One is request object and the second one is response object. Why it is passing request object and response object for the servlet? Servlet need to access the request data and servlet should give the response data. Our servlet is responsible to execute the logic. To execute that logic, we need the data given by the client. Client want to log in. Client will enter username and password. Servlet wants that data to verify credentials are correct or not. Are you getting my point? Servlet will take that username and password from the request object. It verified that username password incorrect. Then what servlet should do? It has to send the error response to client, right? How servlet will send error response to client? By using response object. Servlet will write the data to response. Servlet is writing the data to response directly, or servlet using print writer object to write the data to response? Servlet is using print writer object to write the data to response. Then server will send that response object to client. Are you clear? Yes, good. Fine. Now I want to develop one more servlet application. This is my third application by using servlet. So earlier we mapped our servlet to URL pattern by using annotation. What is that annotation? @web servlet annotation. Now I want to map it by using XML. XML is outdated approach, but I want to show you one example with that. All right. So file, new, I want to create a web application. Let me go for dynamic web project. So project name I am giving 03 servlet web application. 03 servlet web application. I'm not selecting anything else. Just I am giving the project name. Click on next, next. Generate the web.xml. Web.xml is called as deployment descriptor. Click on finish. Click on finish. Now, here my third project is created. I want to set the build path, which is jar file. What is the jar file name? servlet-api.jar. Right click, build path, configure build path, libraries, external jars, servlet-api.jar. Servlet-api.jar. Perfect. Now let me create one servlet class, new class. I want to create one servlet class which is greet servlet in dot some package name, and I'm giving the name of the servlet as greet servlet. All right. Now, so how to create a servlet? How many ways we can create the servlet? 3 ways. By implementing servlet interface, by extending generic servlet, by implementing HTTP, by extending HTTP servlet. So let me go for extends HTTP servlet. So this is a predefined class available in this package. All right. I want to write one method to handle get request. I want to write a method in the servlet to handle get request. Tell me how to write a method to handle get request. Do get method or do post method? Do get. So if you want to handle get request, then we need to override do get method. Public void do get. What are the parameters? Come on, what are the parameters? HTTP servlet request comma HTTP servlet response. Request object and response object. I want to send one message to the client. How to send a message to the client? Come on, guys. Response dot get writer. Response dot get writer. Here, this writer I'm storing into print writer object. I'm storing into print writer object. Perfect. Writer dot append or writer dot write, anything is fine. Writer dot append, I'm giving some message as good evening. Did you complete yesterday task? Yeah, fine. So I'm writing a message as good evening. This is my servlet. I want to map the servlet to a URL pattern. Can you tell me how to map the servlet to URL pattern? @web servlet. I don't want to do that. I want to map it by using XML file. Let's go to our XML file, web content, webinf, web.xml. In this web.xml, we are having welcome file list. We will understand what is that welcome file list also. Remove it. Remove the display name also. Now I want to map servlet to URL pattern. To map the servlet to URL pattern, we need to write that XML configuration. So what is that XML configuration? First one is servlet. There is a tag called servlet. And there will be one more tag called servlet mapping. Servlet and servlet mapping, like that we need to write two tags. Servlet and servlet mapping tags we are going to write. Inside this servlet mapping, I need to write a tag called servlet name, and I need to write a tag called servlet class. Servlet name and servlet class. Okay, so fine. Inside the servlet mapping, I need to write a tag called servlet name and URL pattern. Okay, like this we need to map our servlet to a URL pattern. If we want to map a servlet to the URL pattern, this much configuration we need to do. So which one is recommended? This is outdated approach. These XMLs are out. I told you, lot of things are outdated in the servlet, which I am not discussing. The reason, waste of time. Do you know, if you go for Spring Boot, we have done the Tomcat setup, right? We have done the Tomcat setup. we are deploying our application in the Tomcat server. In the Spring Boot, server is not required. Spring Boot will provide the server automatically. If you create the boot application, server will come automatically to run your application. You no need to install the server. You no need to deploy the application because that is a default behavior in the Spring Boot. So technology is far away. Are you guys getting my point? Whatever the server setup we have done, that will be helpful only for the servlets. Once you come to the Spring Boot, you no need to set up the server. Server will be provided by Spring Boot only. You just need to run your project. It will deploy in the server automatically. Got my point? So now, so do you need to waste our time by understanding all this stuff? Just awareness. That's it. Just we need to have the idea how 10 years back, people used to develop the project. But today, anybody will develop a project by using only servlet? Nobody will develop a project by using only servlet. Servlet is the base to understand our Spring MVC. So by using Spring MVC, we are going to develop the project. But how Spring MVC will run internally based on the servlets only. You need to have the basic idea on the servlet, right? I want to map my servlet to a URL pattern. Servlet name, servlet class, servlet mapping, servlet name, URL pattern. You can give any name for the servlet. My servlet is a greet servlet. I'm giving the name greet servlet. What's my servlet class? Greet servlet. Fully qualified class we need to configure, which is in.ashokid.greet servlet. So like this, I'm writing a servlet. Whatever the servlet I'm writing, the class. So what is the name of the servlet? Greet servlet. Same name you need to write here. And the servlet I want to map to URL pattern. To map the servlet to URL pattern, I'm giving /greet. Are you guys clear? So like this, we can configure our servlet to one URL pattern. Either you can configure servlet URL pattern by using XML or by using annotation also. I configured my servlet to URL pattern. All right. What is the URL pattern? /greet. Perfect. Refresh. Run on server. Select the Tomcat server. Click on next. This is the third application. I'm removing the second application. Click on finish. Okay. My application is running inside the server. Apache Tomcat running on the port number 8080. It opened the browser also. Let's go to the browser and let's hit the URL. What is the URL pattern? Great. Are you able to access? So you can configure the URL pattern by using annotation or by using XML. Sir, two servlets I will develop. One servlet I will map by using annotation. Another servlet I will map by using XML. Is it possible? Yes or no? Yes, you can do that also. Now let me create one more servlet called message servlet. Anything. I'm taking this class as message servlet. Okay. So I'm going to extend the properties from HTTP servlet. I'm overriding do get method. I'm overriding do get method. Perfect. Yeah. So system.out.println. No, sorry. response.getWriter. Response.getWriter. It is giving me print writer. Writer.append. We can give a message. We can give a message. Welcome to servlets. Welcome to servlets. Now I want to map this to URL pattern by using web servlet @/message. Greet servlet is mapped to /greet URL pattern in the XML. Message servlet is mapped to /message URL pattern by using annotation. So in my project, there are two servlets available. Let me stop my application. Yeah, my application stopped. That means my server is stopped. Right click, run on server. Click on next, click on finish. Right. Yeah, fine. So we are able to run our application. Let's go for this URL slash message. Are we able to access the servlet? Yes. Slash greet. This greet is giving good evening. This message is giving welcome to servlet. So how many ways we can map URL pattern for the servlet? In two ways. One is by using annotation. Another one is by using web.xml file. Are you guys clear? Next, make a note. What is web.xml file in the servlet? What is web.xml file in the servlets? Or what is web.xml file? Web.xml file is called as deployment descriptor. Web.xml file is called as deployment descriptor file. Web.xml file is called as deployment descriptor file. We can map servlet. We can map servlets to URL patterns. We can map servlets to URL pattern using web.xml file. We can map servlets to URL pattern using web.xml file. We can map servlets to URL pattern using web.xml file. We can configure welcome file. We can configure welcome file using web.xml. We can configure welcome file using web.xml. We can configure welcome file using web.xml. Now the question is, what is welcome file? Right? What is welcome file? Now, whenever we go to web.xml, by default, we are getting some welcome file, right? Now see here, first time when I open welcome web.xml, like this, it is preparing welcome file list. So this welcome file list, it is used to represent default page of our web application. Now here guys, whenever I run my web application, what happened? By default, my application URL is opening. So whenever you go for Gmail or Facebook, you are typing www.gmail.com or you are typing www.gmail.com/login, gmail.com. Whenever we type gmail.com, by default, the login page, home page will open. Whenever I go for facebook.com, home page will open. Whenever I go for makemytrip.com, home page is opening directly. Okay guys, so whenever we access our application URL, one home page should be displayed by default without sending the request to the particular URL pattern. Now I am accessing /greet/welcome like that. I don't want to access like that. When I access my application URL, directly I want one welcome page. Directly I want one welcome page. So that welcome page we can configure using this web.xml, that is the welcome file list. So here welcome file list, well, index.html. If your project is having index.html, by default that index.html file will open as default page of your application. Now let me configure servlet mapping and servlet, all that stuff. Welcome file list is also available. I'm removing everything. I'm keeping just in the welcome file list. I'm configuring welcome file index.html, and I'm having my servlet configuration also. Servlet is available. Servlet mapping is available. Inside the servlet name is available. Servlet class is available. So this servlet is belongs to this particular mapping. This mapping is belongs to this particular servlet. So here I'm writing a servlet mapping, greet servlet slash greet. Greet servlet is the name of the servlet which is belongs to this servlet class. When a client send a request to slash greet, then this servlet will be executed. So this mapping is belongs to this servlet. How server will understand this URL pattern belongs to which servlet? First it will check what is the URL pattern, greet. This URL pattern belongs to which servlet? What is the name? Greet servlet. That this greet servlet name is equal to which servlet? This servlet. This name and this name should be same. So when this name and this is same, then it will identify the particular servlet. When you send a request to slash greet, it is going to execute this servlet. And for this project, I have created welcome file list. What is the meaning of welcome file list? It is used to configure default home page for the application. Now, here guys, observe, I don't write this welcome file list. I'm writing welcome file list. Let me stop my application. I'm stopping my application. Let me close everything. There are two servlets available in the project. I'm right clicking on the project, run as, run on server. So I'm selecting the server, click on finish. When I open that, what it is doing, check it, what it has done. What it has done, it opened my application URL in the browser. What is the response I'm getting? What's the response I'm getting? 404. What is the meaning of 404? What is the meaning of 404? Page not found. That means default home page is not available. Can we ask the clients, type www.facebook.com/login? Can you ask end users to type /login in the URL? No. When users access facebook.com, one welcome page should be displayed by default. So for our application, welcome page is displaying or welcome page is not displaying? Is displaying or it is not displaying? Not displaying. So do you know how to configure welcome page for the application? Yes. How to configure welcome page for the application? By using welcome file list. Where we need to configure that welcome file list? Web.xml. What is web.xml? It is a deployment descriptor. Welcome file list will configure in the web.xml. Web.xml is called as deployment descriptor. All right. Let's go to our web.xml. Let me configure a welcome file list. Here I'm writing welcome file list. Inside that welcome file list, I'm writing welcome file. You can configure any file as a welcome file. Either you can configure HTML file as a welcome file. You can configure JSP as a welcome file. Configuring index.html. That is my default web page. In our project, index.html available or it is not available? Not available. Let us see the behavior of our server. Remove that, stop the server stopped, close this browser, right click, run as, run on server, click on server, next, finish. So it is saying that the resource is not available. Anything changed in the error? No. Why? I configured welcome file, but is that file available in the project or that file not available in the project? That file is not available in the project. Now I want to create that welcome file. Go to web content. Let me create one HTML file with a name called index.html. Now header tag, body tag, let's write a message. Welcome to my application. I'm just writing one simple message in the HTML file. Now close this. Stop the server. Stop the server. Run it. Run as. Run on server. Next. Finish. What is happening? Is it showing the 404 and is opening one welcome page by default? It is opening a welcome page. So For end user, are you going to display 404 or one welcome page? We need to display one welcome page for the end users. So whenever they access our application URL, by default, this welcome page will be displayed. So do you know how to configure welcome page in our application? Yes, how to configure welcome page in our application? By using web.xml, welcome file list. And this is servlet mapping. You can map the servlet to the URL pattern by using these tags: servlet tag, servlet mapping tag. So inside the servlet, servlet name available, servlet class available. Set mapping having servlet name, servlet URL pattern. For every servlet, we need to configure this servlet tag and servlet mapping tag. So whatever the name you are copying in, whatever the name you are configuring in the servlet, same name you need to copy in the mapping. So this servlet mapping is available here. So server will check this URL pattern. This URL pattern belongs to which servlet? Grid. This grid servlet belongs to which servlet class? In.ashokid.grid servlet class. When you send a grid request, it is going to execute this servlet. Whenever we run the application, by default, I want to load this page as a welcome page. So to open the welcome page of our application URL, we come to welcome page. I created index.html. Where I created the index.html? In the web content folder. Your HTML files, your JSP files, JavaScript, CSS trap, all that web content we are going to keep the web content folder. Are you clear with this? Yeah. Next note. Servlet mapping to the URL pattern. Okay, guys, 1 minute. You need to take this. The root element of the web.xml is a web app. Inside that, we are going to write like this. Inside that, we need to configure servlet to the URL pattern. You just note it down. For fresher interview, they may ask this question: how to map servlet to the URL pattern in the web.xml? Okay, guys, note that. That is a namespaces. Mapping servlet to the URL pattern using web.xml. Mapping servlet to 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 URL pattern using web.xml. This servlet name in the servlet tag, this servlet name in the mapping tag should be same. Completed? Yeah, next one. Welcome page is used to configure welcome file, welcome file, welcome file, welcome file. Welcome file is the default page of our web application. Welcome file is the default page of our web application. Welcome file is the default page of our web application. Default page of our web application. Next point. When we send the request to our application URL, when we send the request to our application URL, welcome page will open by default. When we send the request to our application URL, when we send the request to our application URL, then welcome page will open by default. Yeah. Syntax to configure welcome page in the web.xml. 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 Create this index.html file in the web content folder. Create this index.html file in web content folder. Create this index.html file in the web content folder. Create this index.html file in the web content folder. Create this index.html file in the web content folder. So when we run the application, then by default this index.html page will be opened. So now do you understand what is welcome file? Yeah. What is a welcome file in the servlets? What is a welcome file in the servlets? Welcome file is the default page in the web application. Whenever we send a request to our application URL, by default, this welcome page will be open. Now here we can configure multiple welcome files also, guys. Now observe. I'm configuring one more welcome file. I'm giving the name as index.jsp. First one I'm giving as index.html. Second one I'm giving as index.jsp. Let me create both files in the web content. Okay. XML file. This I have index.html. Welcome to my application. This is HTML page. Okay. Same thing. I need to create new JSP file. I'm creating a JSP file with a name called index.jsp. Click on finish. Inside the JSP also, we will write the HTML tags. Here I'm writing one. Welcome to my application. This is JSP page. First one is HTML page and this is JSP page. So here I'm writing welcome to my application. This is HTML page. In the JSP file, I'm writing this is JSP page. So index.html available, index.jsp available. In the web.xml, I'm configuring both welcome files. I'm configuring index.html and I'm configuring index.jsp also. Save it. Run the application and see the behavior. Stop it. Now right click on the project, run as, run on server. Click on next, click on finish. Which is opening first? Why HTML? The order. The order. Here you can configure multiple welcome files also. First it will check for the index.html. If the index.html file is not available, then it will go for index.jsp. If index.html file is available, then it will execute only that file. Okay. Now let me delete index.html. I'm deleting that file from the project. Now I have only index.jsp in the project. Now stop the server, right click, run as Java application. Sorry. Right click, run as, run on server. Run as, run on server. Click on finish. Good. Is it giving the error or it is going for the second page? So what is the use of configuring multiple welcome files? If one page is deleted also, it will go for the second page. So it will check in the order, which is available first. So first it is checking index.html available in the project. Now if it is available, it will load that page as a welcome page. If that file is not available, then it will check for the second one. That is index.jsp. Index.jsp is available, so it will loaded that JSP file as a welcome page. So interview, they ask you, if I configure multiple welcome files in the project, then what will happen? Is it a valid question or not? Yes. If I configure multiple welcome files, then what will happen? First, it will check for the first file. If it is available, it will execute that file. If that file is not available, then it will go for the second file. Yeah, note down that. So if we configure multiple welcome files like below, then what will happen? If we configure multiple welcome files like below, then what will happen? If we configure multiple welcome files like below, then what will happen? If we configure multiple welcome files like below, then what will happen? If we configure multiple welcome files like below, then what will happen? Note down that. Yeah. First, it will check for index.html. First, it will check for index.html in the project. First, it will check for index.html in the project. If it is available, then it will load it as welcome page. First, it will check for index.html in the project. First, it will check for index.html in the project. If it is available, then it will load it as welcome page. If index.html not available, if index.html not available, then it will check for index.jsp page. If index.html not available, then it will check for index.jsp page. If it is available, then it will load it as welcome page. If index.html not available, then it will check for index.jsp page. If it is available, then it will load it as welcome page. If both files are not available, if both files are not available, then it will show 404 error. It will show error page with 404 status code. If both files are not available, then it will show error page with 404 status code. That means resource not found. If both files are not available, then it will show error page with 404 status code. That means resource not found. So is it mandatory to configure name as only index.html, or I can use any name for that? So we can configure any name for the welcome file. Note that we can use any name for welcome file. We can use any name for the welcome file. We can use any name for the welcome file. We can use any name for the welcome file. We can use any name for the welcome file. So guys, do you understand what is web.xml? What is web.xml? Come on, what is web.xml? Web.xml is called as deployment descriptor. So by using that deployment descriptor, we can configure our servlet URL pattern. We can configure welcome file also in our project. So can you tell me the tags to configure that URL pattern in servlet? Servlet name, servlet class. Inside the servlet tag, we will write the servlet name and servlet class. Class should be modified class. Package name dot class name. Inside the servlet mapping, servlet name and URL pattern. Every servlet should have a unique URL pattern. Can I configure multiple servlets also in the web.xml? Yes, you need to repeat tags. Servlet, servlet mapping. Servlet, servlet mapping. For every servlet, servlet tag, servlet mapping tag is required. And every servlet should have unique URL pattern. So welcome file is used to configure default page of our web application. So default page you can configure any name. It can be index.html or it can be index.jsp also. Are you clear with my point? Yes, perfect. Yeah. So instead of writing this lengthy servlet mapping and all, what is the easiest approach? Annotation. What is annotation we can use? @web servlet. So we can configure servlet URL pattern by using annotation, that is @web servlet annotation. Now, to be frank, will anybody use XML? No. Why? Lengthy configuration. If I have 100 in the project, imagine the web XML size. So for 100 servlets, you need to configure servlet name, servlet class, servlet name, servlet mapping. So 4 tags, 6 tags for every one servlet. 100 servlet means 100 into 6. 600 lines of XML file you need to write. So that is not at all recommended. So that's why. Yeah, come on. Tell me any question. Uh-huh. You can write it. You multiple URL patterns you want to configure for one servlet. Yes, you can do that. You can do that. All right. Perfect, guys. Now, so with this we understood basic how to create a servlet, how to configure the servlet to URL pattern, how to configure welcome page for the web application. Now, in the welcome page, I want to configure one hyperlink. Welcome page, I want to configure one hyperlink. When I click on that hyperlink, my servlet should execute. Are you guys understanding my point? You know hyperlink, right? Yeah. So href, I will configure one href there. When I click on that href, my servlet class should execute and should send a response to me. Now we already have this welcome page, index.jsp or index.html, anything is fine. Welcome to my application. This is JSP page. Here I'm going to write one. Yeah, fine, guys. So here I'm going to write two hyperlinks. A hyperlink we are going to write by using href. So here I'm writing welcome message. Here I'm writing welcome message, break tag. I hope all of you know HTML now. Welcome message and greet message. So in my welcome page, I'm just writing two hyperlinks. Okay. So here, when I click on welcome message hyperlink, welcome servlet should execute. When I click on greet message hyperlink, my greet servlet should execute. I am mapping front end to back end. Front end is HTML, back end is our servlet. I am mapping this front end to back end. Perfect. Let's do this. Refresh, run on server. Already I think it is running. Stop it. We'll configure that. We'll configure that. Okay. First, let us see. Is it opening or not? Run on server. Click on next. Click on finish. Right. So when I click on finish, you can see that welcome page is opened. Opening. Yeah. Good. Go to browser. Hit that URL. When I hit that URL, my welcome page is opened. Here there are two things available, two hyperlinks are available. When I click welcome message, welcome servlet should execute. When I click a greet message, greet servlet should execute. So here, this hyperlink should be mapped to our servlet program. So our HTML page is having a hyperlink. When I click on that hyperlink, my servlet should call. So I need to map servlet URL pattern for the hyperlink. So how I am mapping HTML elements to the servlet program using servlet address. Hey, hyperlink, when somebody click you, you need to call that servlet address, right? So welcome servlet, what is the URL pattern? That is welcome or message, whatever it is. Let me check it. I think it is a message servlet. Yeah, message servlet. Let me make it as welcome servlet. I'm changing the name to welcome servlet. Let me give the message name as welcome. Right? I have renamed the class and I have given the name as /welcome. Second class is a greet servlet /greet is available. So href is equal to welcome, href is equal to greet. So what is this welcome? What is this greet? URL pattern. This is the URL pattern. So welcome is the URL pattern for the welcome servlet. Greet is the URL pattern for the greet servlet. Save this file. Now my server will restart. I have modified that content. Now go to browser, refresh, click on welcome message. Welcome servlet is executing or not? Yeah. Go back, click on greet message. Greet servlet is executing. So we are able to map our servlet programs to HTML elements. So I have created one welcome page. In that welcome page, I have kept one hyperlink. I mapped that hyperlink to my servlet URL pattern. So similarly, I have one more hyperlink. That hyperlink also I have mapped to another servlet by using URL pattern. Right. So it is working as expected. Go back, refresh, click on welcome message, welcome servlet. Click on greet message and greet servlet is executing. So are you able to understand how to access the servlet from our HTML? How to access servlet from the HTML? By using address of the servlet. By using address of the servlet. Note. Accessing the servlets from HTML file. Accessing the servlets from accessing the servlet. Be JSP, anything is fine. Accessing the servlet from HTML file. Accessing servlet from HTML file. Accessing servlet from HTML file. Accessing servlet from HTML file. Got it? Yeah. So you just need to write some hyperlinks in the HTML body. I'm not giving that head tag and all that stuff. Directly you can write the body. Fine, guys. Are you clear with that? Note. First href tag. First href tag accessing welcome servlet using URL pattern. Using URL pattern welcome. First href tag accessing welcome servlet using URL pattern welcome. Second servlet is accessing greet servlet using URL pattern greet. Second href tag accessing greet servlet using URL pattern greet. First href tag accessing welcome servlet using URL pattern welcome. Second href tag accessing greet servlet using URL pattern greet. Comfortable? Yeah. Now my requirement is you understood how to access a servlet from the web pages, right? Now what I want to do is I want to display one text field. I want to display one text field. In the text field, we will enter some username. Take that username, display message along with the username. Okay. Now see here, I'm going to develop one form. In that form, I will ask enter name. Here, I'm giving a field, text field here. Here I will give one button called submit button. I will give one button called submit button. So whatever the name you enter and you click on submit button, this page has to display a message with that username. So whatever the name I will enter, suppose if I enter the name as John, good evening. I want to get that message dynamically. So if I give the name as John, it should give John, good evening, or John, welcome to our institute, or welcome to my application, like that. So John, good evening message I'm going to give. Like this. I want to develop this application. So this is available in index.html. That is my welcome page. Whenever we run our application, then immediately it has to display welcome page with the text field. When user enters some name and click on submit button, I want to display one message in the browser. Right, requirement. Develop a web application. Develop a web application requirement. Develop a web application. Develop a web application to take username from the form. Develop a web application to take username from the form. Develop a web application to take username from the form. Develop a web application to take username from the form and display message on the browser like below. And display message on the browser like below. So whatever the name they enter in the browser, that name should come there. Okay, guys. Yeah. Develop a web application to take name from the form and display a message on the browser like below. So from now, our form based applications are going to start. Guys, from next week, I'm going to combine servlet plus JSPs and we will develop the applications, right? JSP is not a separate part now. So JSP and servlets we are going to combine and we are going to learn application development. How to take the form data Yeah, right. So I want you to develop a web application like this. It should show a welcome page. User will enter a name here and will click on submit button. When we click on the submit button, my servlet should execute and the servlet should send a message to the browser. Can we do that now? Yes. So can I do that in the same project? Can I do that? Or different? Same project, can I do that? Yeah. So here I'm removing everything. I'm removing everything in the index.jsp. It can be HTML file also, no problem. Now, first of all, let me create a form in the HTML. Do you know how to create a form in the HTML? How to create a form in the HTML? Form, action, form, action. What is action? Action represents which servlet you want to call. Which servlet you want to call, that action will be represented in the form. So here I'm giving the name of the servlet as message servlet. I'm giving the servlet name as a message servlet. So here I'm going to type text field. Input type is equal to text. Name is equal to name. Name is equal to name. So here label, enter name, enter name, then break tag. I want to go for next line. In the next line, I will write button. Okay. So input type is equal to submit, value is equal to submit. That's it. Form action is equal to message. What is the meaning of this action? Which servlet you want to call? Earlier servlet by using hyperlink. Now I want to call the servlet by using form, right? So when I click on submit button, this message servlet should be called. First, let us check it. This servlet, this message is displaying, this form is displaying on the browser or not. Let's go back. Yeah, fine guys. Now I'm trying to access my web application. My home page is opening now. Inside this home page, welcome to our application. Enter name. A text field is available. When I enter some name and click on submit, my servlet should execute. Servlet should read the data from the request. Servlet should read the data from the request. Now go and create one servlet, which is message servlet, new class. I'm creating a servlet with a name called message servlet. Yeah, first I want to map this servlet to a URL pattern. How to map the servlet to URL pattern? Come on, guys. @web servlet. @web servlet. Now /message. That is the URL pattern. Now extends which one? HTTP servlet. Do get method. I'm going to override do get method. So client is sending a request from the form. So request data will be there. I want to access the data from the request. That is called request.get parameter. So as we discussed earlier, whenever client send a request, request data will be available in the request object. Request object is passed as a parameter to our do get method. Can I access that data from the request now? Yes. How to access the data from the request now? By using request dot get parameter. What is the data is sending? Key value. So what is the name of the field? It is what? Name only. So client is sending a request with the name. So earlier we used scanner. What is the purpose of scanner? Scanner is used to take the data from the keyboard. So now in the web application, we will take the data from the keyboard, or we'll take the data from the web pages. We'll take the data from the web pages. How to take the data from the web page? Request dot get parameter of key. Request dot get parameter of key. So it is going to give me some value. So that is the name. So whatever the name, client will enter in the text field, that name will come here. Now for this name, I want to add good evening message and I want to send it to browser. So can you tell me how to add the message to this name? Come on. Response dot get writer. I got the writer object. Okay. So which is what? Print writer. Now writer dot append. Already name is available. For this name, I want to append a message. So that is good evening. That's it. Completed. So here I have configured index.jsp page as a welcome file. Where we will configure the welcome file? Where we'll configure the welcome file? Welcome file we are configuring in the web.xml, index.html, index.jsp. HTML not available, so it will load the JSP. Inside the JSP, what is there? We have a form. Form is having one text field and the form is having a button. Whenever you click on the button, then what will happen? Button action, form action. What is the form action? Form action is equal to message. What is the message here? What is the message here? Message servlet. So instead of giving the message, I can give it as a message servlet for more readability. I'm giving the servlet URL pattern as message servlet. Go to index.jsp and configure the URL pattern of the servlet. Action attribute will represent whenever you submit the form, which is servlet should be called. Whenever you submit the form, which is servlet should be called, that we are representing by using action attribute. All right. Let's go to our application, refresh. My web page is reloaded. Let me enter the name as some John and click on submit. 404. So message servlet is not available. Right guys, now so I'm opening my application now. Let me enter some name, Raju, submit. Are we able to access that message now? Yeah, I'm able to submit the form. When the form is submitted, my servlet is called and the servlet is taking the data from the form. How to access the data from the request in the servlet? By using request.getParameter. So client is filling the form here. Client is filling up the form. When the client is fill up that form, client is clicking on the submit button. When a client clicked on the submit button, my servlet program is executing. My servlet is taking the data from the request. How? That means whatever the data client in the form, that data sent to the server in the request object. So now here, whatever the data entered by the client, that data is sent in the request URL or that data sent in the request body, request URL. Data sent in the request URL or request body, request URL. Why it is sent in the request URL? Because it is a get request. Because it is a get request. So tomorrow we will understand get and post. I'm accessing my application. In this application, I am entering the name as Raju. Observe my URL. When I access that URL, welcome page is loaded. In this welcome page, I'm entering as Raju. Click on submit. Can you see name is equal to Raju going in the URL? Yeah, whatever the data that I entered in the form, that data is sent to the server URL pattern because of GET request. So whatever servlet has done when the request is received, servlet the data of request by using request.get parameter. Whatever the name is coming in the request, it has taken that name, append that name to the response object. Able to follow this? Fine. Note down. How to access servlet from the form? How to access servlet from the form? Yeah, already you have taken the requirement, right? Yes, just to take this form, index.jsp. Take this code. Form, enter name, and text field and button. That's it. This is that. Take this code. Take this code. Completed? Yeah. So in this action attribute represents, action attribute represents in the above code, action attribute represents in the above code, action attribute represents in the above code, action attribute represents servlet URL pattern. In the above code, action attribute represents servlet URL pattern. And take this set class. In the above code, action attribute represents servlet URL pattern. And take this servlet class. Just class name. So today we understood how to configure welcome file list and how to access servlet from the HTML pages. How to access servlet from a hyperlink, access servlet from form. Here, note, request get parameter. Note, request get parameter is used to capture the data from the request object. Request get parameter. Request get parameter is used to capture the data from the request object. Request get parameter is used to capture the data from the request object. Request that parameter is used to capture from request object. All right. Yeah. So guys, now you need to develop a form. Next requirement is you need to develop a form. That form data you need to store into database table. Understood? So now you need to the form data you need to capture and you need to store the form data into database table. Do you know how to capture form data? How to capture form data? How to capture form data? Request get parameter. I want you to capture the form data, store that form data into database table and the message to the browser. Let's take one book data, book ID, book name, book price. So you need to capture the book data and you need to store into database table. Book ID, book name, book price. Next requirement. Develop a web application. Develop a web application. Develop a web application to display book form. Develop a web application to display book form. Develop a web application to display book form. When user enter the data, when user entered book data and submit the form, then capture the data from the form using servlet and store the data into database using JDBC. Now combination servlet plus JDBC we need to develop. So by using servlet we will develop a web application and welcome page will display. In the welcome page my book form should display. That book form when user enter and submit that form, you need to capture the data, store the data into database table and send the success message to the user. Form fields, book ID, book name, book price. That's it. Form fields, book ID, book name, and book price. Book ID, book name, book price. Book ID, book name, book price. Is that for you? Double. Do you know how to do this? So form book ID, book name, and book price. Thank you. We'll see you in the tomorrow's class. You can use whatever you want. Tomorrow I will tell the difference. You can do that.